Good evening everybody and welcome to this first DAX video journal of 2016. I hope you've all had a good few weeks in the markets. There's certainly been some really nice momentum moves out there to be had, so hopefully you've managed to get involved in some of them. And today was no exception. We had some nice moves there today as well. What we're going to do for all of you new people out there, if you've not watched this before, if you've not had the pleasure of seeing it, is we're basically going to go through the markets this morning and just look at the setups that you could potentially have taken. What we don't necessarily follow or focus on rather in these videos, the support and resistance levels, and obviously how you analyze the markets earlier on in the morning. That's obviously covered when we do the live trading session. So if those of you were able to join us last week, fantastic. Otherwise, the recording is up there. And as I said in an earlier post on Facebook, what we're going to try and do is really sort of do more live trading sessions, so at least one every 2 weeks, all in a bid to really get you up to speed with the DAX trading and basically get there and start making some money. But the focus of this video here is going to be on the setups that you could have taken so that you know technically what you're looking for, because a lot of the time I find that people have problems because they're not picking momentum or they're not picking the right types of pullbacks, and then they wonder why they're not making any money. Now, I focus the majority of my trading on the 4 range. I'll then, if there's been a particular big pullback, I'll then move out to the 6 range, but very, very seldom do I go to the 10 or the 14 range. I know that there are people out there that do that. Stephen's certainly one of them, but I find that I take the majority of my setups between these two charts here, and rarely, if there's been like a massive move that warrants a bigger pullback, I'll then jump across to some of the larger ranges. So this morning we had the market open. We had a huge rally in the morning, so you can see then the market opens at sort of like 8 o'clock. The market rallies all the way up. It then goes sideways for a period of time before giving another rally to the upside and consolidating around this sort of resistance area here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on that so that you can see all of this price action here and you can see what I'm talking about. So the markets basically start to consolidate around this area here. Now, this here is too untidy a pullback anyway, so it's not something that we would look at taking. But even if it was a beautiful pullback, you'd have to be mindful of the fact that this high here, not just this momentum high, but also going to one of yesterday's resistance levels. So you've got a bit of a clustering of resistance levels there. So that's something that you need to pay attention to. It's not necessarily something that will keep you out of every trade. So for example, if the market's just swung up and come back down, inevitably you'll be trading into a resistance level. But when you have strong resistance there like that, that's something that you do have to pay attention to. Anyway, that wasn't a great setup. That wouldn't have warranted taking a trade. But then after that move there, coming up to around 8:30, we get our first opportunity. Again, it's not the cleanest pullback, but because of this momentum move here, it is something that does convince us to get into the trade. Your entry was there at 8:27. Your stops below the lows, obviously, and then you would have ended up coming out when the momentum started to fade, and certainly on this candle, this red candle over here, when the market starts to turn against you, you would have come out there and made some nice profits. In terms of a pullback, this one here is actually a better one. Okay, so this one here is one that looks nice, and it's one that I would prefer to take. Unfortunately, obviously, this would then constitute the second pullback in the trend, and hence that's not something that I'm willing to be on board with. I prefer just to take the first pullback. I find that those are way more consistent. You can rely on them more. Yes, it does mean that on days like this, there were a number of second and third pullbacks that would have made you money. But from my perspective, it's not what I like to do. Okay, so that was your first opportunity there, which is great. Like I said, you get the second and third pullback here. The second one is a good trade as far as the technical setup looks. But obviously from a second pullback perspective, we're not looking to get involved in that. This opportunity here to go long, that doesn't, obviously that would have been the third pullback, but even if it hadn't, you don't have the William percentage R agreeing with you, so that would have kept you out of that one there anyway. The market then starts to drop off a little bit, as you can see here. This isn't an opportunity. That's not momentum there. This again is not something that I would even look at taking. You know, this momentum here, this isn't really momentum. You can see that the market doesn't really know where it wants to go, particularly with that strong up move there. This is more sort of like just a bit of consolidation and a bit of price acceptance. And hence, you know, we wouldn't look to go short there. We then get this opportunity to go long here. It's not a bad opportunity. It's not one, I personally didn't take this, and the reason that I didn't take it is I've spoken about it in a few videos. If you take a look at the pullback here, so if you look at these big candles, it's almost like there's more momentum going against the trend than there was going with the trend. And then add to the fact that you don't just have this high here, but you've got this previous high. So we could be forming some sort of a double top at this level here. I still consider this to be consolidation, and hence I'm not willing to trade out of this particular range here. This to me is all consolidation. I haven't yet seen the momentum move. Remember, one of the rules is you want to see a momentum move through a high or a low. This is not a high or a low, so it hasn't broken through that high or a low. Basically, you've got a bit of a pullback, you've got a bit of consolidation to the downside, but when you look at it in the overall context of this move here, it isn't the best one. And for that reason, I don't get involved in that trade there. I'm not involved in this one either. Obviously, this one here would have stopped you out. This one over here would have made you a wonderful profit, massive, massive, massive profit, which more than would have made up for the loss on this one here. And it probably would have made you, 2-3 times even more than that, the risk that you would have taken. But as I said, rules are rules, and it's just not something that I'm willing to get involved in. We then get another opportunity up here. Now, this is the first pullback after the momentum move, because as I said, this one here was still capped by these highs. So I'm looking for the momentum move through the highs or through the lows. We don't get to enter on this candle over here because the Williams percentage R doesn't agree. And from your eyes perspective as well, you look at this here and you know that this isn't enough of a pullback at this moment in time, because you've got this momentum move to the upside there. That there is not enough of a pullback. If you look at the chart harmony video, you'll remember that we're looking for a pullback that's sort of about 40 to 50% of the move. And this one here doesn't constitute that. We then get an opportunity over here at about 9:30, so almost an hour after our last trade. And that obviously does agree with our pullback rules. We've got the Williams percentage R in the right place. If you measure that pullback from here across to here, you'll see that that is roughly 40 to 50% of this previous move here. So it meets those rules, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking for clean price action. We're looking for harmonic price action. And then you get your entry to get into the market there at 9:25, and the market goes on to make you a pretty penny. In terms of other opportunities for the day, there were a significant few other opportunities for the day. Obviously, we generally stop trading at about 10 o'clock. But for those of you that are watching your charts, and sometimes I do as well, I always have the charts in the background, but I'm not watching it like a hawk the way I am between 8 and 10. But obviously, for those of you that are watching your charts, there are a few opportunities that occur later on in the day. So this would have been one of them. Eventually, it breaks down to the downside and pulls back around midday. And then you have this one over here where the market breaks through the highs here. It marches on up. Personally, I wouldn't have taken this opportunity here. The reason for that is if you look at this sort of up move here, okay, basically this price action here isn't very convincing. So yes, there are some upwards moving candles, but it's sort of very, very juddery. Okay, it's not a nice upwards trending market. So from my perspective, it wasn't the best one, and it's not one, even if I had have been watching it at this time, which I wasn't, this is not one that I would have taken, because this momentum here is going against it is more than what's going with the trend. So hence I would have just completely passed up on that opportunity. Then the market goes sideways for a lot of the day before eventually breaking to the downside later on this afternoon. The first opportunity, the first decent pullback you would have had would have been this one. Well, this one here doesn't really count as one that you would get involved in because it breaks through these highs here. If you look at the momentum of these candles here, It's way more that's going with the trend. And that's very, very important. So a number of you may not pay attention to that, but that's overall market context. That's you taking everything into account. And that's going to make you more profitable. It's going to get you into higher probability trades, okay? So what you want to do is you see this pullback here. And if this kind of started to turn it around this area here, then potentially you would look for it and it's something that you could take the trade. You take this overall pullback into context. But what's happening here with this pullback is it actually breaks through this high here. I know it's just a mini one, but it's sort of like an overall indication that, you know, the momentum isn't necessarily with you. Obviously, we get proved wrong in this situation here. But what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to get seduced into looking at these opportunities saying, oh yeah, that's wonderful, that worked. You know, just because it works once. Because I promise you, if you look at these opportunities where the market pulls back that much, okay, breaks through other levels and things like that, over the long term, they aren't nearly as profitable as they look when you're looking at it on a chart here. So it's kind of like false to say, oh, actually, that was a great pullback. Because even though it was nice in terms of, you know, we've got nice, what's the word for it? We've got price acceptance. So we've got profit taking type candles here. It's just a little bit too much. So the other opportunity this afternoon would have been this one over here. Once you do eventually get the momentum move to the downside, you then get this pullback here. This is the one that you would have wanted to be involved in and not this previous one here. Okay, so that wraps up this week's DAX today's. So obviously we'll do another one this week. That wraps up today's DAX video journal. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you got a lot of value out of it. If you've got any questions, as always, please feel free to post them in the Facebook group. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next DAX video journal. So take care now.